Hello, hello. My name is Colin. This is Chicago Reacts, Americans Learn. And today I am going to be watching Napoleon Defeats Russia. Friedland, 1807. Friedland? 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 No? It's like friend without the N. Yeah. There have been a few names so far that I've struggled to pronounce. I'm not going to lie, I'm a little embarrassed by that because they do seem like pretty basic names to be able to say correctly. But that's what these videos are for, right? For me to learn. I'm here to learn. I'm an American, and I got a lot to learn. Right? All right. Okay, so again, I'm going to be watching this video here, Napoleon Defeats Russia. This is, of course, by Epic History TV. And if you haven't already, be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Hopefully you've done that already. Now, this is the fourth video, I think, that I've reacted to regarding Napoleon and his time during the Napoleonic Wars and whatnot. I've certainly been learning a lot. I am quite ignorant when it comes to this area of history, so you know, yeah, I'm ignorant. So I'm likely to give some pretty ignorant statements or questions. So please bear with me, and if you would be so kind, be sure to educate me in the comments about things I might get wrong, or if I have a question and you know the answer to, please let me know. All right, so I think that's enough of an intro. So without further ado, let's find out. Let's learn a little bit about Napoleon's defeat of Russia, shall we?
An Epic History TV History March collaboration, supported by our sponsor Skillshare, home of more than 22,000 online classes. Find out about our exclusive special offer at the end of the video. One week before Christmas 1806, French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte arrived in the Polish city of Warsaw, then part of Prussia. A year had passed since his great victory over the Austrians and Russians at Austerlitz, and 2 months since he'd hammered the Prussians at Jena. But Russia still had powerful forces in the field, the most important of which was the Russian First Army, commanded by General Bennigsen. Napoleon would not be master of Europe until it was defeated, and Russia and Prussia forced to make peace. But that winter, Napoleon's first attempt to trap Bennigsen near Pultusk got bogged down in thick Polish mud. The Russians withdrew to Białystok. The French army, half-starved and frozen, was ordered into winter quarters. While in Warsaw, Napoleon began a famous affair with a young Polish noblewoman, Marie Walewska. In the late 18th century, the once mighty Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth had been swallowed up by its neighbours, Russia, Austria, and Prussia, in a series of annexations known as partitions. Until in 1795, a third and final partition wiped Poland off the map.
It really is pretty crazy to think about how much the borders around the world have changed throughout history. I mean, I know there was even, for a period in, I don't know, areas like Africa and stuff, they really weren't what we would call countries, right? That's as far as I know, I think. So I could very much be wrong. I am not a student of history, so but yeah, that's kind of wild. I mean, imagine, I guess, did I say this in a previous video? I feel like I said this in a previous video, but like I guess the last time that I'm aware of like a major change in the borders of countries was like right after World War II, right? Um, but that's I don't know if someone knows of a more recent time when that's occurred. Please let me know. And I'm talking about like re-bordering, or restructuring, redrawing the borders of the maps here, not like I don't know, like the U.S. Taking Hawaii as a state. You know, that doesn't really change the borders. Just like changes the color, I guess. You know, if you're labeling the countries by color, you know. Um, I feel like that was a really convoluted way of saying that. I apologize, but yeah, if you know of a time post World War II when countries' borders were altered, again, let me know.
Now, Polish patriots looked to Napoleon as their saviour, praying that his victories against their occupiers would lead to the rebirth of a Polish state. Marie Walewska became Napoleon's mistress in order to further this cause. Ordinary French soldiers, however, had little love for Poland. It was impoverished, freezing, and they missed home. Desertion rates soared. There were even 100 cases of suicide.
Wow.
Marshal Ney, commanding 6th Corps, sent patrols towards Heilsberg, looking for better quarters. What they found were Russian and Prussian soldiers on the move. They'd stumbled into a surprise winter attack by Bennigsen. Napoleon quickly laid a trap for the Russian army, ordering Ney and Bernadotte to retreat and lure Bennigsen west, while he led the rest of the army north to fall on his flank and rear. But the Russians captured a French courier carrying the Emperor's orders to Marshal Bernadotte. Bennigsen, now warned of the trap, ordered a retreat, fighting a series of rearguard skirmishes against the pursuing French. But he refused to give up the city of Königsberg without a fight, and turned to give battle at Eylau.
Okay, so I've seen enough here where I understand that if you're in war, you don't want to be surrounded on all sides, right? So like, I have to assume then that Bennigsen, when he was going down to meet, let's see, these, I don't know if you can you see my mouse on that screen there? I don't know. It doesn't look like you can. But going to meet the people down west, I have to assume he did not know the whereabouts of Napoleon and the troops that he was leading, to then allow himself to be surrounded, or attempt almost be surrounded. Yeah, I guess that would be counted as a blunder, a big mistake. Yeah, I'm just like I'm lost in thoughts. I'm still having the same amount of the questions that I had in the previous videos about how do they communicate, you know, strategize, all that stuff like that. Like it's really impressive, but really, like, I still have so many questions, and these videos aren't answering the questions that I have.
But he refused to give up the city of Königsberg without a fight, and turned to give battle at Eylau. The Battle of Eylau, fought over 2 days, was one of the most brutal of the Napoleonic Wars, fought in freezing conditions, with neither side backing down. Marshal Augereau's 7th Corps, advancing into the face of a snowstorm, lost its way and was cut to pieces by Russian cannon fire. 5 French Eagles were lost. Napoleon's army was only saved by a devastating massed cavalry charge by 10,000 horsemen, led by the fearless Marshal Murat. and remembered as one of the great cavalry charges in history. At Eylau, for the first time as emperor, Napoleon failed to win a clear victory on the battlefield. He and the Russians covered up the true scale of their losses, but both sides are estimated to have lost a third of their armies in the carnage.
So if they covered up the true losses in this battle, like how do we know that they weren't fudging the numbers with their other battles? You know, right? I mean, it's all part of the strategy of keeping your citizens and your troops in good spirits. Of, like, you know, maybe not knowing the full devastation of their losses. And I understand that, but I don't know. I assume the historians have ways of figuring out the true numbers, right? But yeah, how do we know? How do we know if they were telling the truth? Not the historians, but, you know, the generals, Napoleons, and the like. You know what I'm saying? Anyway.
After the horrors of Eylau, both armies sought time to rest and recover. Meanwhile, the newly formed French 10th Corps under Marshal Lefebvre besieged Danzig, held by 13,000 Prussians under General Kalkreuth. The city came under heavy French bombardment and infantry assault. After 8 weeks, with no prospect of reinforcement, the Prussian garrison surrendered on the 27th of May. Napoleon's northern sea flank was now secure against any possible Russian landing. The French Emperor now commanded an army 190,000 strong, against just 115,000 Russian and Prussian troops. But it was Bennigsen who moved first, launching a surprise attack against Ney's 6th Corps on the 5th of June. Ney conducted a brilliant fighting withdrawal and escaped. Bennigsen, having lost the element of surprise, and with Napoleon advancing, retreated once more. 4 days later at Heilsberg, the French lost 10,000 men in a botched assault against Russian defences. But the Russians continued their retreat the next day. Napoleon thought Bennigsen would head north to Königsberg, but instead he retreated northeast, keeping to the east bank of the Aller River. So when Napoleon's army marched north, it was Marshal Lannes' Reserve Corps on his right flank that next encountered the Russian army, near the small town of Friedland. In the late afternoon,
I would also like to be educated on how these quotes from battle were recorded. Assuming there were people whose job it was to be surround the generals and the important people during this period, to kind of like write that stuff down, you know, or maybe after the fact, you know, sit down and discuss with the generals. So what happened? What were some epic things that you said during battle today? I don't know. How do we procure and save these epic quotes from these battles? That's a question I have.
Noon of the 13th of June, Russian cavalry scouts informed General Bennigsen that they'd found a single French corps at Friedland. Bennigsen decided he had time to cross the Aller River and smash this isolated corps before the rest of the French army could arrive to save it. And he ordered his army to begin crossing the river. Marshal Lannes, commanding 16,000 men and facing 46,000 Russians, sent an urgent message to Napoleon that he was under attack from the main Russian army.
Okay, so that kind of answers one of the questions I had about, you know, communicating and strategizing. So they do have messengers. I'm assuming someone on horseback. It just seemed like in the other videos, you know, with mid-battle, like moving around, changing, like surrounding, you know, the enemy and all that stuff. Like I don't know, because today we have, radio and stuff like that. It's a little more instantaneous, but it just seems like, I don't know. It's all happening a lot faster in the video for, I'm sure, logistical purposes. But yeah, did they also use doves and pigeons? If you know the answer, let me know.
Then he fought a skillful delaying action, hiding the weakness of his force behind a large screen of skirmishers, while gradually yielding ground to the enemy. Lannes was still holding off the Russians as darkness fell. That night, Russian engineers built 3 pontoon bridges at Friedland to speed the movement of troops over the river. But Bennigsen was taking a huge risk. If this turned into a major battle, his army would have to fight with its back to the river and the steep banks of the Mill Stream dividing its left wing from its right. Bennigsen had also badly underestimated the speed at which Napoleon's Grande Armée would react. The first French reinforcements arrived that night. The Emperor himself wasn't far behind. By dawn on the 14th of June, about 40,000 Russians had crossed to the west bank of the Aller River. Bennigsen ordered an attack on the village of Heinrichsdorf to turn the French left flank. But French cavalry reinforcements, led by General Grouchy, intercepted the Russians. In more than an hour of charge and countercharge, the French horsemen finally drove the Russians back. Marshal Mortier's 8th Corps now arrived to reinforce the French centre. In Sortlac Wood, General Oudinot's elite Grenadier Division fought stubbornly against Prince Bagration's left wing, but was outnumbered by the Russians and gradually pushed back. Around noon on a sweltering day, Napoleon himself arrived. He was soon followed by 1st Corps, commanded by General Victor, standing in for the wounded Marshal Bernadotte, as well as Ney's 6th Corps and the Imperial Guard under Marshal Bessières. The date, the 14th of June, held special significance for Napoleon. It was the 7th anniversary of his great victory over the Austrians at Marengo. A good omen, he declared. The battle then entered a lull, as Napoleon assessed the situation, saw Bennigsen's dangerous position, and issued orders for an attack to take advantage of it. Bennigsen, meanwhile, who was tormented by ill health throughout the day, saw that he now faced the full might of Napoleon's army, and issued orders for a retreat. But before Bennigsen's retreat could get underway, at 5:30 p.m, 3 salvos from the French guns signalled the start of Napoleon's attack. It was led by Ney's 6th Corps on the right wing, who first cleared Bagration's infantry from Sortlac Wood. But as Ney's troops left the cover of the trees, they came under heavy fire from Russian cannon across the river. As the French attack faltered, Prince Bagration rallied his men and launched a cavalry counterattack. Ney's corps retreated. But now General Victor's 1st Corps came up on his left. Its artillery commander, General Senarmont, advanced with 30 guns and blasted the Russians at point-blank range with case shot. Hundreds of Russians were mown down within minutes. Under this onslaught, Bagration's men began to waver and then retreat. Around 7 p.m, the Russian Imperial Guard launched a desperate counterattack to try to halt the French advance on Friedland. But they were outnumbered and outgunned. As exploding shells began to start fires in Friedland, the French centre and left wing joined the attack. With its only escape route under threat, the entire Russian army began a panicked retreat towards the river. But Friedland's houses and bridges were now ablaze. The town became a deadly trap for the Russians. Many were drowned trying to cross the river, others killed or captured.
God, I'm just like, my imagination's going wild with just the chaos of what this must have looked like, you know? Man, it's I was gonna say, it's like, it's too bad that we don't have, photographs, during this period, so we could see it, but also, like, kind of glad that we don't, because it must have been horrific. My God. Yeah, jeez. Oof.
Friedland, some units were able to escape across a ford or along the river bank. But there was no disguising the Russians' terrible defeat. The Battle of Friedland was one of the most decisive victories of Napoleon's career. At the cost of 10,000 casualties, he had inflicted twice as many losses on the Russians. About 20,000 men, killed, wounded or taken prisoner. 40% of Bennigsen's army.
That's a lot of people.
The Prussians abandoned Königsberg the next day, which was occupied by Soult's 4th Corps, while Bennigsen's shattered army retreated across the river Niemen into Russia. Tsar Alexander's advisors implored him to make peace with Napoleon. He accepted their advice, and a ceasefire was agreed. Alexander and Napoleon met for the first time aboard a raft in the middle of the river Niemen, near Tilsit, and developed an immediate rapport.
I'm guessing those are the, the French greeting, kiss on the cheeks, whatever. I don't know if it's just France, but that's the one I associate that type of greeting with, the kissing on the cheeks. But this painting definitely looks like they're kissed on the mouth. I'm assuming they didn't get along that well so shortly after war. But I don't know, this guy down. I've already tried. Yeah, you can't see my mouse, right? Yeah. Okay. Anyway, one of the guys down here in the group looks pretty excited about this kiss that's going on there. Anyway, that's funny. Yeah. Clearly, I'm just an immature American that is uncomfortable with physical touch.
Tilsit proved to be one of history's great diplomatic summits, as the two emperors feted each other for days, with banquets, parades and concerts, then discussed affairs late into the night. A friendship of sorts developed. While Russia's former ally, King Frederick William of Prussia, was left out in the cold. And it was Prussia who would lose most in the treaties.
All right. I want to read what this comic says. What a Prussian duke I was to listen to him. I am afraid I shall never recover it. That was, excuse me. Not sure who that guy is. But yeah, that does seem kind of strange. I guess they did become friends, bros, after this. Like, it just seems so bizarre to be not that personally implicated or affected by a loss on this scale. Yeah, weird.
Out in the cold. And it was Prussia who would lose most in the treaties of Tilsit, signed 2 weeks later. 1/3 of Prussian territory was taken away to create the new Kingdom of Westphalia, to be ruled by Napoleon's 22-year-old brother, Jérôme.
Okay, how many brothers did Napoleon have? Because that's like 3 at this point, right? Was it this video or the other one that they mentioned, like, the other 2 or 3 brothers? I don't know. That's a lot of information. I've watched a few of these today. Yeah, how many brothers does Napoleon have? Let me know down in the comments.
And the Duchy of Warsaw, to be ruled by the King of Saxony, which Polish patriots hoped would prove a stepping stone on the road to their own state. Polish troops were recruited into the Grande Armée, with Polish lancers even forming part of Napoleon's elite Imperial Guard. Russia only had to give up the Ionian Islands, as Alexander accepted an alliance with Napoleon that left the French Emperor master of Europe. Alexander even agreed to join the continental system, Napoleon's economic blockade of Great Britain, which banned British ships and goods from all French-controlled ports. The system had been established the previous winter by Napoleon's Berlin Decree. Napoleon hoped that by cutting off British trade with Europe, he'd cause financial chaos and political upheaval in Britain, allowing him to make a favourable peace. There was just one problem. The continental system didn't work. Not only was...
Shiver me timbers! Ha ha! I suppose you... let's try that again. I'm going to read the whole comic as I'm hearing it in my head. I blockade ye English scoundrel! Oh, shiver me timbers! Ah ha ha ha! I suppose next you will be blockading the moon! I'm sorry. It's been a long day. Let me know if I should continue doing my impressions in this, or if it's just not the right tone for these types of videos. Yeah.
Was it impossible to enforce and undermined by widespread smuggling, the system damaged French trade just as much as British trade. The decisive weapon in this economic war would prove to be the British Royal Navy, which that summer ensured its continued naval dominance by launching a preemptive strike against the neutral Danish fleet at Copenhagen, capturing their warships before they could fall into Napoleon's hands. Royal Navy squadrons blockaded all major French ports, seizing any ships trading with France, while ensuring British merchants could continue to trade overseas in relative safety. The Navy even seized the tiny Danish island of Heligoland as a base for smuggling British goods into Europe. But most disastrously for Napoleon, the continental system would draw him into 2 conflicts that proved ruinous for his empire. The first would be fought in the Iberian Peninsula, where Napoleon decided to force Britain's ally, Portugal, to join the continental system. In November 1807, French troops, supported by their Spanish ally, invaded the country. The Portuguese royal family fled to their colony of Brazil, as the French occupied Lisbon without a fight. It looked as though Napoleon had won yet another easy victory. But the Peninsular War was just beginning.
The Peninsular War.
Thanks to our sponsor, Skillshare, for supporting this video. Skillshare membership offers instant access to more than 22,000 online classes. And if you're one of the first 500 to sign up using the link in the video description below, you'll get your first 2 months free. Skillshare courses cover a range of skills, such as business, tech, design, and creative. In fact, Epic History TV's been on Skillshare taking a few refresher courses on some of the software we use to make these videos. And if you wanted to make your own videos about history or any other subject, Skillshare would be a great place to start, with beginner classes on industry-standard software such as After Effects, Photoshop and Premiere, as well as courses on filming, script and screenwriting, and more. Thanks to the YouTube channel History March for creating the battle map and animations, and to all our Patreon supporters for making this series possible. Visit the Epic History TV Patreon page to find out how you can support the channel, get early access to videos, and vote on future topics.
All right. I think that's it. So yeah, again, another very interesting video about Napoleon and his conquering of Europe. Definitely very interested to see what the Peninsula War is going to entail. I guess it's going to be the first major loss. That's kind of how they're setting it up of Napoleon. Because so far, maybe there have been like little tiny losses, but it seems like for the most part he's kicking butt. Yeah. So I think it's about time we see Napoleon get put in his place, right? So that'll be for next time. If you want to see that, be sure to like, share, and subscribe, or ring the bell icon? Is that still a thing to get notified? If you want to be notified about the next video here, yeah, the little bell icon up in the top right corner. You know how to use YouTube, right? Who am I to explain this to you? But yeah, thanks for joining. I hope you enjoyed that, and hope to see you next time. Until then, stay classy.